Natalie's calm expression turned cold when she heard the word illegitimate. She stared at Nick and asked in a deep voice, "Who are you calling an illegitimate?" He burst into laughter, and his voice rose a few notches. He pointed at Liam and said, "I said he's illegitimate. Can't you hear me?" Before he could finish, Natalie slapped him viciously across the face. She almost couldn't believe that this man standing in front of her, calling her son illegitimate, was the same person she had loved back then. After 5 years, she had discovered that their relationship was only worth this much. How could he be so cruel to a child, never mind her? The slap was loud and clear. Nick was stunned. He covered his face with his hands, still in a daze. Cheryl, who was standing beside him, could no longer suppress her anger, and she shouted, "Hey, how could you hit him?" Nick was her fiancé now. By hitting him, it was as if Natalie had hit her too. Cheryl's face became so hot it turned red. But no matter how angry she got, Natalie remained unmoved. She simply turned her head and looked at her coldly, saying, "If you keep talking nonsense, I'll hit you too." Nick was a man with an awful temper. When he heard Natalie's words, he became even more furious. "Do you really think I won't hurt you?" He took a step forward, clenching his fist. But before he could make a move, Liam jumped down from his luggage and ran towards his mother to block the blow with his hand.
"You nasty people! Don't bully my mommy! Stop it!"
As he said this, he tried to push Nick away, but he was too small and could not move him at all. His face flushed as he tried his best to protect her, and Natalie's heart softened. "Idiots!" Nick was already furious, but now his rage increased. He reached for Liam's arm to push him out of the way, but before he could grab him, a tall figure got out of a car, walked up to them, and pulled the child into his arms. "My little boy." Bryce's voice was icy. "When did you become so big to teach these guys a lesson?" He had seen what was happening. Seeing the woman who had spoken to him so righteously on the plane being mocked by these two had made him unhappy. And when he had seen Nick raise his hand as if he was about to strike the boy, Bryce could not stop himself as he opened the door of his car and got out. Natalie turned her head in surprise. She hadn't expected the man who had been so rude to her on the plane to actually help her.
"Daddy!"
When Liam saw Bryce, he hugged his leg excitedly and said,
"Daddy, these two bad people are being mean."
When he said Daddy, both Nick and Cheryl froze. They had thought Liam was illegitimate, the son of Natalie and that other man. They hadn't expected her to actually find a man abroad, let alone one who looked rich and important. The two of them looked at each other and were suddenly at a loss for words. Bryce turned around and glanced at Natalie. He said in a deep voice, "Didn't I tell you to wait outside? How did you end up in this situation so quickly?" She was stunned for a moment. She didn't know why he was helping her, but she took his cue and grabbed his arm. Who knew that we would encounter such a crazy couple right outside the terminal? Forget them, darling. Let's go. He nodded, but when they turned around, he glanced back at Nick, who was standing blankly to one side, and said harshly, "Remember, before you try to teach someone else a lesson, you should take a good look in the mirror and see if you have the right to." Nick was scared witless by the man's merciless gaze. He gritted his teeth as he watched Natalie grab the man's arm and get into his car. It was too much for him to bear. Cheryl stood at his side, her face filled with undisguised jealousy as she looked at the man's Cadillac. She was extremely angry. That was a limited edition car. It was not something that just anyone could buy. How had Natalie gotten involved with such a man?
Will Cheryl's jealousy make her do something she might regret? Where will Natalie's newfound courage take her? Check our next episode to know more about Natalie's life. Or install Pocket FM audio app to listen to the entire series uninterrupted. Share, like, and subscribe to our channel for more such gripping tales of revenge and retribution. Stay tuned for more.